Hello and welcome to the Mindset Michelle TV show. We're so super excited to have you joining us today for yet another episode. And we love having all the letters and all the emails and everything, letters, showing my age there, all the notes and everything that are coming through about how much you're enjoying the show and how all of these different tips that the fabulous experts are sharing are helping you to create that positive mindset. So for today, we have the extra special guest, Steve Rosvold. Hello, Steve.
Well, hello, Michelle. It is so great. When you asked me on the show, I just couldn't wait to get on. So this is really a special day for me. Thank you.
Well, it's so wonderful to meet you and to speak with you about this area. And for those of you that aren't aware of who Steve is, because as you can tell, he's one of our guests from the US, the lovely US. Steve is the founder of CFO.University and knows about everything and anything to do with finance and accounting and leadership. And as a lifelong learner and as somebody that set up lots of learning, obviously with a name like CFO.University, it's all about learning and that university style learning. I'm really looking forward to hearing more. How did you come into the world of finance? How did you create it's a pretty audacious thing to say .university, so it's CFO.University, it's not CFO.Academy or Institute. So being that audacious, I love that. And so let us know a little bit more about your story and how you came to be doing what you're doing now.
Well, I'd be happy to, and thanks for asking, Michelle. I was interviewing somebody recently. He's actually the coach or the CFO of the Kansas City Chiefs, a Super Bowl football team here in the U.S. And he was talking about he lived finance from when he was 8 years old on. His dad used to read him the Wall Street Journal, and he told this big story about how he got into finance and his passion for it. My story is a bit different. I wanted to be a professional football player when I was younger. And it was when I got into college and I looked at the counselor and said, what classes should I take? And the counselor said, well, you can be a history major, or you can try to be a professional football player, but when those things don't work, you better take some business administration classes. And of course, that led me into accounting. And so my first classes, I got hooked. Finance became a passion, and I guess the rest is history.
Oh, wonderful. I love how, especially when I speak with my American guests, how it is somebody in that guidance counselor sort of phase of their life that helps them to kind of go through that path and that journey. And with CFO.University, how did you come up with the name .university as opposed to institute or academy or something?
I always looked at it as, my background was, I was went to a small college in Minneapolis, but then I went to the Booth School of Business, the University of Chicago, and then I did a lot of very practical leadership work in the finance area, including being the CFO a number of times. And so I thought we had a unique model to give people to give CFOs in a practical sense. So we're not trying to compete with the MBA schools or even the accounting and the finance academies. We're really trying to teach finance leaders the practical aspects of being a finance leader and ultimately a CFO. So everything that we focus on is the practical aspects. And we'll let the MBA schools and the accounting bodies, teach all the technical parts. But we want to make great practical CFOs who really help our economies, including our businesses and other parts of our economies. So I think university fits really well for us because we really want to shape these finance leaders into great citizens and great custodians of their companies.
Thank you for explaining, and that's a wonderful explanation, and I really understand because if you think back to the older establishments like the Oxfords and the Cambridges, it was about that ecosystem, the community of learning. It wasn't just that you went and read law or read arts or something. It was actually that whole immersive experience and very practical because of that. So I love your obvious passion and the involvement of how CFO.University has come about. I'm fascinated though, what does success mean to somebody like yourself? obviously you've been very successful, and if you work in finance, you've probably been very financially successful as well throughout your career. But what is it that now, with your stage of career, what does success mean to you?
At this stage, success for me is pretty easily defined. And that's, having a positive impact on people. And, I judge myself sometimes on how big that pool is, which is, I think, a fault of mine. I think we can all have impacts on individual people really easy, but I've chosen a fairly big aspiration, trying to impact all the financial leaders in the world. But if I can have a positive impact on individuals and in general humanity, that's a really fulfilling fulfillment for me at the stage in my life. And I think we're getting there slowly but surely. We're getting there.
Oh, lovely. I really like that. Again, that just like the university part, that audacious goal of, influencing and supporting every finance person across the globe, across the planet. I think that kind of, those kinds of helping people and helping the planet goals are what more and more everybody across society is moving towards, because it's much more of that focus of how I can be of service, and that's the real definition behind that servant leadership. With
Well,
that in mind,
I appreciate that, and I especially appreciate you comparing us with Cambridge and Oxford. That's very helpful. But we have some advantages on what they had when they started, and that's the whole internet and the ability to create a huge community. Now they can catch up with us now, but when they started, they didn't have that, and that's one of the big advantages for somebody like me able to start, an institution like CFO.University.
and you raise a really good point there, because I think that this for me is one of the exciting times and you can see how excited, and the exciting things about being alive at this moment in time, and part of that positivity that I really want to keep reinforcing for people, because the world is our oyster. Now with technology, you can become a videographer, you can become a this, you can become a that. You don't need to study for millions of years in whatever technical college or university. You can actually watch a couple of tutorials on YouTube and start doing it. And then as you realize more and more the areas that you want to specialize in, then go to an online university like CFO.University, or go to an Oxford or a Cambridge or somewhere. And the opportunities, that ability to learn things that were harder because the information wasn't accessible before, has just exploded the world of opportunities for everybody, wherever you are in the world.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think you said the world is your oyster, I think earlier, Matt, and I agree that what a wonderful time to be living today, where we have so much access to so many things, and that certainly broadens our horizons and giving us so many more choices, whether it's in a career or whether it's socially or whether it's from any kind of standpoint you can ask for. There's more options available, and I think that's a real positive.
In fact, you may have been around a little bit when things like Word Perfect and some of those other models. I mean, it's aging me a little bit to talk about Harvard Graphics and Lotus 123 and all of those other packages. But it's interesting now, because people would maybe assume that Word's the thing or Microsoft Excel's the thing, and you do have a little bit of competition with some of the Apple versions of these, but pretty much Microsoft now own, the word processing package and the Excel or the numbers package and spreadsheets package. And Atlassian and other organizations are bringing in other versions, but effectively the market's still very much controlled. But that's where I feel like this technology and this information revolution that we're in now, we're actually very lucky, because it's like those early days where you could use Word Perfect or Word or this or that. And there's more variety, like there's not just one video editing tool or one this or one that. We're still in that stage where there's so much entrepreneurship that we have so much variety with it as well.
I think that's true. The entrepreneurship side, you kind of, Microsoft does own the Office suite, sure, but there's so much technology that people are using. Whether it's Calendly in your calendar function or Zoom like we're using now. There's so many opportunities. It's amazing. And I'll tell you a little story. So you talk about, Lotus 1, 2, 3. I go back to about the first copy of a program called VisiCalc, which
Ah,
actually, I don't know who made it, to be honest with you, but it actually was the precursor to Lotus. And it goes back to one of my first jobs when I first started, and we used it for some really interesting things at the time, and it was way out there back then. And I know they don't exist anymore, but they were kind of the first spreadsheet. So the evolution and watching the evolution, how quickly things are growing, how exciting. You can kind of jump on at any point in this journey, and if with a little bit of studying, like you had mentioned, you can get pretty far along the way in some interesting technologies, some new business potential. I was at an entrepreneurship group. I taught some finance to, I think it was 10 or 12 entrepreneurs here in the Vancouver area in an accelerator program. And the ideas that these people had and how much they knew about so many things, and a lot of it was because our ecosystem has gotten so wide and so broad. They could really investigate deeply what they were looking into and create some really interesting business plans. Now, fortunately, they didn't have a great finance background, so I really got to help them there. And they didn't go to the internet to learn that, so I was lucky. But it was amazing that and the ideas they had and their excitement about their businesses and what they were doing was really it was profound for me to see these younger, they were between 25 and 40, and they were doing some really interesting things. That was I was just really proud of our community and excited for the future.
it is exciting, and I think that a part of that will be that some of the challenges that they have will be, the things that help them to rise and come up with the incredible um, insights and ways of fixing some of today's, especially around the climate and poverty and some of the terrible things that still exist on the planet. But bringing it back to creating that successful mindset, and we touched a little bit there around ecosystems, but what sort of suggestions would you have for viewers around how they can create and keep building on a successful mindset? What would you suggest to people?
I'm a big proponent of Stephen Covey on this. And I think having an abundance mindset is, if we have a scarcity mindset, you're kind of clawing your way at things, trying to push people away. If you have an abundance mindset, you're bringing people towards you and you're embracing people. And I think that type of attitude creates so many more opportunities. And by the way, it makes things a lot more fun, having an abundance mindset. And so I really cherish that. People who can kind of look and say, how do you fit into my world, or how do I fit into your world? And rather than how do I protect my little space from anybody encroaching. So I look at that abundance mindset as being a really important part of how I've been successful in kind of embracing other people. Even what some people consider competitors. Many times, I mean, we don't compete that much. We might have people who do similar things, but they have a different market. They have a different way of doing it, and so we can always share those ideas. So I think abundance mindset is really important, and part of that then ends up being collaboration. And so having those skills to collaborate, and I know you had mentioned some a common friend that we have that you met years ago in a program, and you found ways to collaborate with them. So I know you have kind of that same mindset of that collaboration piece.
Yeah, and I think that Stephen Covey is. It's funny hearing how you say Covey. Covey is how we might say.
Oh, yeah.
We were talking before the show about picking up on those Australianisms and those Americanisms, but that was the first one that I'd heard, thankfully. But Stephen Covey and that abundance mindset, I think that is part of that technology connecting everybody more and more and building those ecosystems. It is helping to shift, I believe, that mindset from you're all a competitor and I can't share the content or the information with you, because now the information's available to everybody and the clients included. So it becomes much more about the IP for you is about you, and having that abundance mindset where I want to partner with you, I want to support you in this area, I want to do this, I want to do that, that helps you to then partner, collaborate, and build bigger ecosystems. And more and more, we're finding in my company On Purpose Transformation that those partnerships are becoming more and more global because of technology in ways that we may never have even been able to think about before. And it even includes, yes, with people that previously might have thought of as direct competitors, but people want and they're looking for those ecosystems which are global, and they're so much easier to set up now because of the wonders of technology.
Yeah, and I've even noticed in the past 5 years since I started CFO.University, I've noticed there's more people are getting that whole piece. I mean, and people that I originally were talking to and they were kind of scared of me, wondering what I was doing, have really, come back and embraced kind of what they're doing with our tools. And so that's been a really exciting development. I would say on the collaboration front, one of the things when I define collaboration, I think the most important aspect is alignment. And the alignment piece isn't necessarily that we even have the same goals or same objectives in mind, but alignment to me means that when I work for you, you are better off, and when you work for me, I am better off. And so there's, I think I said that right, but making sure that you're both better off when you're working for each other. So that's what alignment means, and that's really the critical part. Because a lot of times we think of, if you can't get to that point, you can spend a lot of time spinning your wheels. So collaboration works when it works, but if it doesn't work, you can try really hard, and if you can't find that place where you're both adding value to each other, then it gets to be pretty hard. So, but alignment is that key part to collaboration. So I look at it like this: mindset of abundance leads to collaboration, and collaboration with alignment leads to, value creation for both parties. And so kind of going down that road is a journey that I think can really be satisfying and create a lot of relationships that are a lot of fun to have.
And I love that part that you've just so wonderfully explained there about that alignment. So it's not just, by working together, we build bigger mailing lists or some of those earlier days. And I don't want to dish that too much. But in the earlier days, it would have been about, come on my show or do this or do that together, because you now have access to, like 30,000, 50,000, whatever people. But if you look under the hood, it might be people that aren't actually in your market or that you're trying to sell to. The alignment now is much more about, and I love that way you've described it, as being better off. So we're both better off by working together. You reminded me, funnily enough, of in finance the term synergy, where the sum of the whole is greater of the parts. And that, when you were talking about the alignment, I thought, oh yeah, that's a lovely way of saying in a different way that synergy concept where, my organisation's bigger by working with your organisation, and your organisation's bigger by working together. And I agree. I like yourself, gone down the path of partnerships at times, and they do take a lot of time and effort as an initial investment, and they ended up not coming to fruition. But you learn a lot about that, and you learn about what to look for in terms of the alignment for your organisation to make sure that, yes, what we're both looking for is going to bring that synergy and that sum of being greater, both organisations being greater. And we're talking about organisations, but I want to remind people watching, this is also about, work relationships. So when you're in an organisation and you're working with your colleague on a team or something, keeping in mind these same concepts about thinking abundance. You're not competing with your colleague. You're actually there, and how can you come into alignment and support each other so that the team comes into that greater synergy.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point. The synergy is a good term for alignment. They're very similar, I think, in the way we think of them. I would also say that there's a spectrum. So a partnership is a deep relationship, right? Because it become, and in the U.S. we think of them as contractual. There's a lot of pieces that go into it. There's all kinds of different alignment and relationships that can get built along a spectrum that can help both parties, that don't have to end in a partnership or something else. They can be, much simpler, much easier. The partnership is a lot of work, right? I mean, that then you're stepping in each other's shoes. And so I would say that, that doesn't have to be the end game. It can be on the journey with the right people, but understanding where that relationship should lead to for the best alignment and the best collaboration, that is an art. And if I could figure out that art, that would be fantastic. But I think that's something that I'm always looking for, is where, where. And I was talking to somebody yesterday, a good friend out of the UK actually, and he's been very kind to me along the way. And we talked about what should we do next and how do we do this next. I said, well, Steve, I think we can go this far. But I think after that, then we start having conflicts that we're going to have a hard time resolving. So he's very honest in the relationship, very honest on what we could do together and what we couldn't. And boy, I sure appreciate that type of, kind of frankness. So we weren't going down a path that was going to lead us into a brick wall. And so that if you can get with relationships like that, where you know how far to take that relationship, I think it's really, really valuable. If you can create enough of those, the world again is your oyster.
And I love how you've now taken it back to that one-on-one and that individual relationship, because as I was talking about, in an office or in your own company or in businesses where you're looking for those partnerships, it comes very much back to that relationship. And the other part of what you were talking about, that honesty about what you're thinking and feeling and where that relationship might go. I think that's also really important. And imagine if that was in a team, in an office, where it was like, well, okay, yes, we're going to work together on this piece, and I think that, it'll help the team, et cetera, et cetera. But, we're both going to go for a promotion in 6 months. So I think this is the point that we can both sort of support each other with this. But after that, it needs to have a clear leader, so that when they're looking at the promotion in 6 months, it's not, they both did it. They're quite clear about who's done what part in this. And so I think whether it's in a small team or in a company, all the way through to businesses, I like that idea you had of the spectrum, and that underneath that is then understanding and looking at the relationships. And the more of these relationships that you build, obviously, the more opportunities that you have to grow in your job, in your company, in your ecosystem of what you're doing in the world.
Yeah, I like that you're taking it to the workplace too. I mean, I look at it more as outside relationships with us, but in the workplace, it's exactly the same thing. And you point that out very clearly. And I think that's very true. Very true that in the workplace, the same thing happens. And having those, and we happen to call them office politics, right? That's what it becomes, office politics. I'm going to keep my information to myself. And if we can be more open in the office, I think we'd all be a lot happier, and I think we get a lot more done. And that isn't all just alignment. There's other things I'm sure that play into it. But we tend to kind of hold our cards close to the vest if it comes to our career. We don't want to share too much of that with other people. Or when it comes to, I want to make the boss happy instead of I want to make the boss better. We think about how, those conflicts come into play, and they're very similar with outside businesses. So I like the idea of creating that same type of system within an office as we have, the alignment with outside entities.
Yeah, and I think a large part of that comes back to it's all the relationships that you're building in your life and in your ecosystem to grow and develop. And I liked one of the other elements that you were talking about before, especially when I asked you, what does success mean? And so I want to really make sure that we're also talking about that it's not just a transactional relationship, it's also to do with what we're doing for the team, what we're doing for the company, what we're doing for the community and our clients, and so on and so forth. I think that's really important, because again, like we were saying, it's not just technology that's changed and relationships and access to things that's changed. It's also this focus on what am I doing in my life and what's the meaning, and is my work meaningful, are my relationships meaningful? All of these bigger, and it's funny because it comes back to university again, those bigger philosophical type of questions that are now becoming more and more a part of everyday life and everyday relationships.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point when it comes to people. Dealing with people is, and again, Covey said, in dealing with people, slow is fast and fast is slow, and that really tells the relationship how important the relationships are. I think, for me, the whole part about what success means to me and how it's helping people. There's a time piece in there. I'm at a stage in life, partly where I've kind of earned enough stripes and that I can take the time to do that now. And if I was younger and thinking that's sometimes hard to do, you're scrambling for the next paycheck or you're not thinking you're in the right spot. And it sometimes is harder to kind of put that relationship part in front. And I can guarantee people that if they do put the relationship first, even when you're younger, you'll be better off quicker. And I look at that as, you know, the gift that you can give people, it doesn't have to cost anything, but if you can give somebody something, you're going to earn trust quicker, you're going to earn credibility, and you're going to feel good. So there's a lot of things about gifting. And in this case, it would be professional gifting, whether it's mentoring somebody, whether it's helping out on a project with somebody, whether it's saying a good word about somebody who may be in a competitive position to you. But those gifts, they pay back later. They may not pay back that very minute, but they always come to pay back. And so that's one of the things I think if we can learn to gift early, and that doesn't mean monetary gifts or things like that, but it's how do we gift in somebody's profession? And that's giving them something they don't have right then, whether that's credibility, whether it's help on a project, whatever it might be. And I think that's a great way to build that trust and earn that the right to then be able to do more relational business with them and build that relationship.
I love this concept of gifting that you've introduced because I think that it's something that's very important to me and very important to what we do. And it's not about the money, it is about supporting people in ways that support them. And it can be interesting sometimes to recognize that it's not about what you think is best for them, it's about what they need or what is best for them and from their lens and from their point of view at the time. And you're so right. I remember years ago somebody talking to me about this angel concept that, if I was being an angel to somebody and helping them in some way, not to necessarily expect the feedback or the rewards or whatever to come from that person, but to watch out and see who was being an angel to me. And that movie, Pay It Forward, shows it so beautifully. But it really is, I think, this idea that different people can be different angels or different gifting people to each other. And it's not necessarily a linear thing. It's actually more of again, I love that word ecosystem. It's this ecosystem where when you're giving and you're resonating and your energy is saying, I'm gifting and I'm in that mindset of supporting others and supporting their careers and supporting my ecosystem by ensuring that everybody is doing well, then that gifting energy then starts to resonate and bring in gifting for yourself as well.
Well, I'm a believer that most people, if they think about their happiest times or they're maybe not most productive, but the happiest times, it's when they've given something, not necessarily when they've received something. I look back on my life and think about when was I most fulfilled, and it wasn't when somebody handed something to me or gave it. It was when I gave somebody else something and saw them benefit from that. And I think if people really think about it, I think most people would feel the same way. That's the rewarding part about our lives is that part of our life.
That's such a wonderful and profound space to go to. And Steve, coming back a little bit now to CFO.University, if people wanted to find out if there's finance people or people know finance people watching, what's the best way for them to be able to get hold of you?
Well, thank you for asking, Michelle. I sure appreciate that. The best way to learn about CFO.university is go to our website, which is www.cfo.university. So it's pretty easy to find. Um, they can also find me on the LinkedIn profile, Steve Rosvold. I think they'll find me pretty quickly, and I'd love to connect with you and share our story with you and learn more about their stories. Um, and that would be great. And thank you for asking.
You're very welcome. And my favorite question of the show, besides success, is around what advice you might give to your younger self.
Yeah, that's we covered that a little bit earlier, but my more detail would be if I looked back, relationships would have been more important. The finance part less important, relationships more important, and I've come to realize that more and more. I had a story. I had a 9 year career with the first company I was in. I was a rising star. I was going crazy, and I was in had a few mentors that I really enjoyed working with, and I thought I was the cat's meow, and and then I got transferred to a place where it wasn't quite so friendly. I was new. People looked at me like, who is this guy coming in here? And I didn't realize my relationships had just kind of happened before, and I thought they were all good. But I was not out for other people. I was out for myself. And when I realized that, and it took me a few years, by the way, I said, you guys are all crazy. Well, then I looked at it. No, they weren't. It was me, and it was a me problem. And so I hadn't realized the people first part was more important than my job first or finance first. And so, if I was going to speak and scold my younger self, or at least try to train my younger self, it would be, put people first, and other things will happen well. And of course, there's training aspects. You have to be competent in the first place, but once you're competent in leadership roles, that it's the people that are going to make things happen. You're not going to make things happen, and your leadership becomes really taking care of them. So if I was if I was teaching my 21-year-old self what to do, it'd be, deal with don't worry so much about the next day at work and what job task you have to do. Worry about the people that you're working with and how to make them better.
What a wonderful, wonderful sentiment, and advice for your younger self, and advice for everybody in their day-to-day lives. We can get so caught up with, I have to finish this next task, I need to this, I need to that. But that reminder about, stopping and not so much smelling the roses, but talking about the roses and sharing those moments with others in those relationships around you. Thank you so much for being on the show today, Steve.
Michelle, it's been my joy. I've really enjoyed it, and thank you very much for hosting me.
It's been fabulous. And to everybody watching, I hope that you again have really got a lot of value about how you too can create your own successful mindset with some of the suggestions that we've shared today. But for now, from my heart to your heart, be great, be fabulous, and be you.